When someone hurts you, when they leave as if you never existed, or when they deliberately provoke you just to see you explode, the natural human reflex is to react. You want to speak, to prove yourself, to shout, "I am not as weak as you think." But what few people realize is that the more you react, the more control you give away. Every explanation, every long message, every burst of anger is an unconscious way of saying, "My emotions still revolve around you." And that is the moment you lose, not in action, but in emotional balance. Today's video is about the opposite. Not how to react, but how not to react. Not how to express, but how to withhold. This is not a lesson in weak silence, but the art of deliberate calm. When you stop reacting, you do not disappear. You simply withdraw the right for others to disturb your inner peace. And that is when something strange happens. The person who once believed they controlled you begins to lose their balance. They cannot understand why you are not angry, not begging, not explaining. They expect noise but find only quiet. They expect you to chase them, but see you standing still. And that silence, slow, cold, and intentional, begins to shatter their ego piece by piece. Stoicism calls this emotional control, the ability to stay calm when you have every reason to lose control. It is not the suppression of emotion, but the decision to choose what truly deserves your energy. When you react, you give away power. When you remain silent, you take it back. That is why in every emotional game, the one who knows when to stop is always the one who wins in the end. This video will take you through the entire process, from why not reacting makes others fall apart, to how to maintain strategic silence that Stoics call the power of absence. This is not a lesson in revenge, but a lesson in reclaiming emotional freedom, transforming silence into a mirror that reflects everything you no longer need to say. Emotional manipulators always have a script. They know exactly when to say something hurtful, when to stay silent, and when to act cold in order to make you lose control. Everything they do serves one single purpose, to pull you into reacting. They know that the moment you react, they regain power. Every message you send, every explanation you give, every emotion you show tells them that you are still under their influence. But when you stop reacting, the entire game collapses. Because Stoics understand one thing very clearly: nothing confuses a manipulator more than deliberate silence. When you no longer respond, they begin to lose control. They send messages and you do not reply. They try to provoke you and you stay calm. They create drama and you simply observe in silence. At that moment, they no longer know how to keep the game going. They were used to you being the one who reacts, the one who tries to fix things, the one who always seeks clarity. And when that disappears, the emptiness starts to unsettle them. Your silence makes them doubt themselves. It makes them feel unpredictable, no longer in control. That uncertainty begins to break them from within. According to psychology, when a behavior no longer produces the expected result, the brain enters a state of confusion known as loss of predictability. They start thinking about you more, not out of love, but because they cannot understand why you have changed. Why are you no longer angry, no longer demanding, no longer reacting as before? At that moment, the game they once controlled becomes their burden. They begin to feel the same anxiety they once made you experience. Not reacting does not mean you are weak, it means you have regained control over your emotions. Because when you remain silent, you are breaking the psychological pattern they rely on to manipulate you. You take away their anchor, making all their old tactics useless. And while they struggle in confusion, trying to regain control, all you need to do is stay calm. In every emotional battle, the one who does not react is the one who truly wins. Not all silence carries the same meaning. Some people stay silent because they are hurt, because they fear being dismissed if they speak, or because they hope others will understand without explanation. But there are also those who stay silent because they understand too well, because they no longer want to waste energy on something unworthy. These two kinds of silence may look the same on the outside, but their essence is completely different. One is born from fear, the other from inner strength. Weak silence is when you say nothing, yet your mind is in chaos. You pretend to be calm, but inside you are waiting for a message. You try to look strong, but your heart trembles every time their name is mentioned. That is not calmness, it is endurance. Outwardly, you are silent, but inside you are screaming. You stay silent in the hope that they will recognize your value, not because you have truly let go. This kind of silence is fragile because it is built on expectation, and every expectation has the power to hurt you once again. In contrast, Stoic silence is when you no longer need to prove anything. You do not speak, not because you are afraid, but because you understand that words are meaningless when the other person is not ready to listen. You do not react, not because you are cold, but because you have matured enough to know that not everything needs to be explained. You choose quiet not to hide your pain, but to protect your inner peace. In that silence, you no longer wait, resist, or seek to win. You simply let go. Stoic silence does not avoid emotion, it masters it. You allow yourself to feel, but you do not let your emotions dictate your actions. You do not run away, you observe. You do not suppress, you transform. And when you can do that, your silence is no longer a mask but a symbol of strength. Not the strength of someone hardened by pain, but of someone who has realized that true peace never needs to be proven with words. When you remain silent long enough, something strange begins to happen. The person who once hurt you, who thought you would always react, always chase after them to fix everything, slowly begins to hear their own echo. Because your silence is not just an absence, it is a mirror. In it, they no longer see you, but the reflection of their own actions, the careless words, the indifference, the wounds they once dismissed. Your silence, once mistaken for emptiness, becomes the space where they are forced to face what they have been running from. At first, they remain confident. They think you are just angry, that in a few days you will message them again, that your silence is merely a way to get attention. But as time passes, with no reply, with your calm unshaken, confusion begins to grow. When there is no voice left to argue with, they are left only with their own. When there is no one left to blame, they are forced to listen to themselves. And in that moment, your silence becomes the deepest punishment, not because you wanted to hurt them, but because they begin to hear the echo of the pain they once caused. People often fear silence because silence forces us to hear the voice within. When there is no noise left to distract us, everything we have done becomes clear. They begin to remember the moments when you were patient, the times you forgave, and the efforts you once made. They start to understand that you did not leave out of hatred, but because you were simply too exhausted. And once they realize that, regret begins to spread, slowly but irreversibly. You do not need to accuse, to prove, or to speak in order to teach anyone a lesson. Your silence has already done that. It is not loud or dramatic, yet powerful enough to make them see themselves in the mirror called consequence. And while they struggle with that emptiness, all you need to do is keep walking forward, calmly and gracefully, because your lesson is done, while theirs has only just begun. Time is the one thing that cannot be manipulated. It is like a fair mirror, soft in the beginning, but clearer as days pass. Your absence works the same way. At first, they will not feel much. They will remain confident, believing you will return as before. They will think that a few signals or vague words will make you react. But then one day they realize you are truly gone. No more messages, no more glances, no more familiar presence that once reassured them you would always forgive. And at that moment, time begins to do its work, quietly, slowly, but mercilessly. The early days of silence are when you learn self-control. But as time passes, they become the ones who start to suffer. Because while you grow comfortable and quiet, they begin to feel empty. That feeling does not arrive like a storm, but like a steady drip of water eroding pride day after day. Every morning they wake up and check their phone, only to feel disappointed. Every night before sleep, they think of you, and the emptiness grows larger. The silence they once dismissed now becomes a haunting echo. The power of time lies in repetition. One day of not reacting may be effort. 1 week of silence is determination. But 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, that is proof of real change. When silence lasts long enough, it stops being an act and becomes a state of being. And at that point, they understand that you have moved into a different stage, one they can no longer reach. As for you, the one who was once hurt, you begin to feel lighter because peace is no longer something you must demand, but a reward for your perseverance. Time does not erase wounds, but it turns pain into wisdom. It helps you see who was genuine and who was merely used to having you there. And when you let time pass without reacting, you allow the universe itself to speak on your behalf. Because time always stands with those who know how to stay silent at the right moment and remain consistent until the end. Keeping silent is not just about stopping the talking, the messaging, or the showing up. Those are only the outer layers. The true power of silence lies in cutting the invisible threads inside your mind. The memories, the unanswered questions, the waves of longing that sometimes pass like a cold wind. Stoics understand that only when you detach yourself from both sources, external and internal, do you become truly free. Cutting the external source means you stop looking for them. You stop checking what they are doing, stop visiting their social media, stop wondering if they still think of you. Because every time you search, you reopen the wound. Every seemingly harmless action, watching their story, rereading old messages, or replaying a familiar song, is a way of giving the past permission to control your emotions again. To find peace, you must accept not knowing where they are, not knowing how they are doing, not knowing whether they miss you or not. What matters is not the answer, but the fact that you no longer need it. But cutting the internal source is the hardest battle. It means stopping the cycle of self-inflicted pain through memories. It means no longer replaying the good moments or blaming yourself for what has already passed. You cannot heal if you keep revisiting the wound every day. Stoics call this emotional detox, a process that requires time and discipline. Whenever an old memory resurfaces, do not chase it away and do not hold on to it either. Observe it the way you would watch a cloud drift by. It comes and then it goes, and you remain there, calm and steady. Cutting the external source helps you regain stillness. Cutting the internal source helps you rediscover yourself. When these two meet, your silence is no longer endurance. It becomes liberation. You no longer need to prove anything or seek anyone to fill the void. You simply return to yourself, to the peace that has always been there. It was only hidden because you were not silent enough to hear it. Keeping silence is not easy. Human nature constantly pushes us to react, to explain when we are misunderstood, to respond when we are insulted, and to hold on when we are left behind. But Stoics understand that reaction is what makes us lose self-control. To maintain strategic silence, we must train ourselves, not through theory, but through practical tools that help the mind remain steady amid chaos. The first tool is the dichotomy of control, the clear distinction between what we can and cannot control. You cannot control what others think, say, or do, but you can control how you respond. Once you understand that, you stop trying to change others and focus on yourself. Every time emotions start to rise, ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it pass. Stoics win not through words, but through calmness. The second tool is premeditatio malorum, the practice of imagining possible misfortunes in advance. Remind yourself that today someone might disappoint you, say something unpleasant, or even try to provoke you. When you are mentally prepared, you are not caught off guard. This is not about being pessimistic, but about staying proactive. A prepared mind is not easily shaken. The third tool is the rule of 24 hours, the discipline of waiting a full day before reacting. When something triggers the urge to speak immediately, wait one day. After 24 hours, emotions settle and reason takes over. And when you speak from calmness, your words carry far more weight than any impulsive reaction ever could. Finally, there is the evening reflection, the nightly practice of self-examination. Ask yourself, did I react too quickly today? What could I have done better? Just a few minutes each evening, and you will gradually learn to stay silent before small provocations. That silence will no longer be suppression, but wisdom, the most refined weapon of the Stoic mind. When you remain silent long enough, they begin to waver. Their ego cannot accept that the power they once had over your emotions no longer works. And that is when they start to test. They test not out of love, but because they cannot stand the loss of control. They want to see if they still exist in your mind. If you react, even in the smallest way, they will feel victorious. But if you remain calm, their game begins to fall apart. These tests usually arrive very softly. A like on an old photo, an ambiguous comment, or a message that seems harmless. How have you been lately? That is not genuine care. It is their way of measuring whether the door is still open. If you respond, they will feel reassured that you are still there, still predictable, still the same person. But when your silence continues, they begin to feel confused, because not reacting is something they do not know how to handle. In the game of emotions, the silent one holds the tempo. At this point, they may raise the level of testing. They will revive memories, bring up old moments, or use a familiar tone to trigger your old reflexes. They know you once softened, once forgave, once felt easily moved. But this time you are different. You do not need to prove that you are strong. You only need to refuse to participate. No replies, no display of coldness, simply sustain silence. Because sometimes doing nothing is the most powerful action. If the situation forces you to answer, keep your words neutral and brief. No emotion, no open doors. A simple, "I am fine, thank you," is enough. Do not add more. Do not extend the conversation. Because Stoics understand that true silence is not about saying nothing. It is about refusing to let anyone disturb your peace. And when you can do that, they will understand that the control over your emotions no longer belongs to them. There will come a time when they return, not for a clear reason, but because they cannot bear the emptiness created by your silence. At first, they come back out of curiosity, then gradually out of remorse. They realize that your presence was something they took for granted, and your absence has become the thing that keeps them awake at night. But when that happens, remember this: not everyone who returns is sincere. Many come back not out of love, but because they cannot accept losing control. This is the moment when you need reason more than ever. The heart will want to believe, to forgive, to hope that this time will be different. But a Stoic does not let emotion lead. They observe behavior, not words. Set 3 filters before allowing anyone to step back into your life. The first is behavior. Have they truly changed, or are they still using the old tricks to regain your trust? The second is time. Sincere people are not in a hurry. They prove themselves through consistency rather than promises. And finally, consistency itself. Do they respect you when you no longer bend as before? If they are kind only when you are silent, but change when you show boundaries, that is not remorse. That is a tactic. Even if they pass all 3 filters, you still have the right not to return. Forgiveness does not mean allowing repetition. Forgiveness is how you free yourself from resentment, while returning is a decision that affects your long-term peace. Stoics do not seek revenge, but they never go back to the place that once cost them their self-respect. And if they return only because of emptiness, do not try to fill that emptiness for them again. Let your silence continue to be the mirror. When they realize that the door is closed forever, they will understand that sometimes loss does not come from someone leaving, but from you growing enough not to return. When all the noise fades, what remains is not them. It is you. Silence is not just an ending, but a beginning. A space for you to rebuild your life in your inner world. Stoics understand that loss is not a period, but a chance for rebirth from within. When you are no longer driven by emotions or old memories, you can begin to rebuild a stronger and freer version of yourself. Start by taking care of your body. Eat well, sleep enough, and move for at least a few minutes every day. Every step you take, every deep breath you draw, is a way to return to the present moment. When the body is strong, the mind gradually steadies. Stoics believe that physical discipline is the first step toward mental discipline. Next, turn inward. Take time to write down your thoughts, not to complain, but to understand your emotions. When you write, you are conversing with yourself, and through that, you begin to see your own recovery. Read a book, meditate for 5 minutes each day, or simply sit quietly in stillness. Each of these is a way to restore the peace you once lost. Finally, rebuild your world through small things. Surround yourself with people who bring calm and focus on actions that help you grow. Each peaceful day is a brick in the foundation of a new version of you, calmer, wiser, and more grounded. When you truly rebuild, you will realize that silence is not escape, but a return. Because sometimes only in stillness can you hear the strongest voice of all, the voice of your own soul. After all, what Stoicism teaches us is not how to appear cold, but how to live peacefully amid what we cannot control. True strength does not lie in reacting quickly, but in knowing when to stay silent. When you no longer need to prove yourself or win every argument, that is when you truly master yourself. Stoics understand that not reacting does not mean not feeling. They still feel deeply, but they do not let feelings take the lead. They choose calm over impulse, observation over confrontation. Every day they train through small acts, taking a deep breath before speaking, pausing a moment before reacting, and smiling at what does not deserve their energy. Because they know peace is not a gift, it is a skill honed through every conscious decision. You do not need to change the world. You only need to change how you face it. Every time you remain silent instead of exploding, you win an inner battle. Every time you choose calm over anger, you heal yourself without needing anyone to save you. That is the Stoic spirit, mastering your reactions, and through that, mastering your life. If this video made you reflect, leave just one word in the comments: untethered, meaning free from all attachments. Because when you learn the art of deliberate silence, you have truly cut the final thread that tied you to what once hurt you. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you will not miss the next Stoic lessons. Every video here is a reminder that strength does not come from speaking loudly, but from your ability to hold on to your inner peace.